we don't eat tortilla chips, we eat tortilla chips. And so the llamas are llamas. And they have llamas and alpaca because they take the wool, and if a person, man or woman, is stationary for more than 2 or 3 minutes, they have a drop spindle out and are spinning that wool, which they use to make not only their clothing, but things to sell, because they're exquisite weavers. It's just amazing. But I noticed a big change from my visit in 2016 to our visit last year. And that was a change of attitude and empowerment of most of the villages. With improved health has come the ability to look beyond tomorrow and envision social and economic possibilities in their future. One village last year had started a women's cooperative to develop funds, and the men were asking for support to begin a similar cooperative and develop a business plan for their village. DeSaya staff has facilitated these with visioning meetings. One of these goals, and you can move on with the pictures, was to develop a regional health clinic in one of the villages, and you'll see an image of that village. This, I thought you'd enjoy. Every little village around the school had soccer pitches. Soccer is a passion in most of the world, and particularly in South America. But I did ask the question, how often is that window replaced? Regularly. Hadn't figured out to put a metal grate or something in front of it, but the kids just loved it. Moving on. And this is one of the young boys and this was the village of Sasicancha. Moving on. This is in the village of Tio Grande. Look at the colors on the walls, so as not to be outdone by the colorful skirts and layers of skirts that the women wear, and the traditional head covering, which gives them shade from the sun at those high altitudes. But we were there in the fall, but through the winter, those women sometimes had leg warmers, but always bare feet and rubber sandals. Remarkable. Moving on. This, in that same village of Tio Grande, was the physiotherapy assessment and treatment area. I had a whiteboard that I put end on a little raised platform in the village hall, and some mats off the floor so that if I was needing to do an assessment and someone was lying down, they at least had a little cushioning from the hard wooden surface that they were on. Moving on. This was one of my villagers, and interestingly, she complained about issues with her back, and so we went over some suggestions of things that she should and could be doing, and she went and through Urbano in Quechua, and then to me in English, "You told me that last year." And I went, "Oh, yes, now I remember, looked familiar. Have you been doing that?" No. So patients around the world are just the same. Some choose to listen and act on making themselves well, because that was always my message to my patients in my clinical career. So, what are you doing to make yourself better? Oh, yes, I need to work at that. Next, please. This is one of the villages, Chaudimayo, and this was where a village meeting, and then with the next slide, I think you'll see a picture. No, this is just going up to the highlands and the terracing on any site that could be used for growing. And the next picture, I think, will show Chaupimayo and the village meeting where they were discussing trying to get a health office in their village so that the Cali didn't have to do everything on her own. So that was happening. Going on. Difficult to see very well, but in each little village, as well as the public buildings, there was typically a church. It's a very Catholic country. Moving on. And just a bit of a hint of the single track gravel road, which is how we got to the villages from the Sacred Valley down below where we stayed overnight each night. And that was only about 3,200 meters, and then we went up and up and up to 4,400 meters was as high as we went, but quite remarkable. Next. Again, a picture of some of the colorful costumes, and this in fact was DSEA staff, including Urbano, doing scenarios of different sort of social interaction, because part of the issue is that there are issues with the men who often go out to work the Inca Trail to serve as porters, carrying what, and I examined the government regulations, 60-pound packs, but they had packs that were probably 200 pounds that they were expected to carry. So of course they would develop back and joint issues. But coming back into the village after 2 or 3 months working the Inca Trail, having developed a taste for alcohol and other services, brought back disease and abuse to their families. And so part of the outreach was to develop skills that they would recognize more effective ways to deal with conflict. And it was interesting to see the people were captivated and would laugh and nudge each other to acknowledge that, oh yeah. And then the same scenario and a different way of reacting to it and what a positive change that made. Moving on, a couple of my patients. As in Central America and South America, the native people are usually small of stature, wiry, and but wonderful folks. Moving on. This was a picture in the first year of the training session, and the women and the Calis and the others and the Peruvian healthcare workers were there, and a demonstration of postpartum hemorrhage and that sort of thing, using partially set bags of cherry jello, and what would be the normal amount of blood to expect at a normal delivery, and if there was a second and third and whatnot. And then they had to learn how to pack the womb to prevent that bleeding so that the patient didn't die. When DSEA started, the high Andes area had the highest incident of infant mortality in the Americas. And with the increased knowledge that has resulted over the past few years, that's dropped dramatically. Next, just an image of an ancient, actually a pre-Incan aqueduct across the Sacred Valley. And the next picture is of a Wari village, which again predated the Incans and had a village site of probably 10 to 15,000 people living in that site. After Moving on, and of course, the Catholic Church. In every town in the Sacred Valley, there's a huge church that you would pay to get in to see the amazing murals that were painted. And the forecourt of that is all stones, which are arranged in fanciful patterns. But you can imagine the difficulty of someone with mobility issues even trying to get into the church on a surface like that. Moving on. This, out of interest, is quinoa. For those of you who have ever tried that high-protein grain, that's what it looks like when it's growing. And the next picture shows its cousin, kiwicha, or amaranth, which happens to be the highest source of protein, plant protein in the world that has yet to be discovered anyway. Moving on, Machu Picchu. We were there just before Easter, and in many Catholic countries, and certainly in Peru, Holy Week is the most important religious season of the year. And I would suggest that probably Maundy Thursday is the top of that. And we were privileged to be invited to Urbano's home with his family for a traditional 12-course Easter meal. 12 courses, which relates to the 12 disciples. And so we had varieties of soup, and the most interesting was flying fish roe soup. A lovely, rich, tasty broth, but a full skein of roe, or skeins of roe in the dish. And someone suggested, well, which apostle would that have been named for? And I suggested, appropriately for today, that it was probably Thomas's dish, because I doubt that I would ever eat that again. Desea is now expanding into other villages, some which have no access by road, so they have to hike in 4 hours over the mountain pass to bring the water filters and the learning and teaching opportunities to more villages, so that more people have the gift of knowledge to make their lives better. The image of Machu Picchu is because with Urbano's family and the Maundy Thursday, our daughter Sarah, our youngest daughter, arrived with us, and we went on to visit Machu Picchu. Although Urbano is an accredited guide in the country, has been to Machu Picchu hundreds of times, probably approaching 500 times. His family had never been, because their means don't permit them to be extravagant. We had the privilege of seeing the wonder of their country, which this is a World Heritage Site, through their eyes for the first time. And my experience was that Machu Picchu was every bit as awe-inspiring on my second visit as it was my first. And the next image shows Katie and Sarah on site at Machu Picchu. Moving on, this is the road that takes you up to the visitor center, where you then walk into the site. And on, moving on. Okay. In recent weeks, our community of faith has been challenged to examine our talents, gifts, and resources, and encouraged to increase our commitments to ensure the viability and future of this congregation. While we are asked to share more, I believe we must be judicious in how and where we give our gifts, knowing that we won't always see immediate results. But we must have faith and believe, for as Jesus said, "Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed." Katie and my experience in sharing our clinical knowledge and time in this medical outreach program was a privilege we cherish. We realize that our teachings are resulting in effective, positive changes in the lives of those gentle and loving Quechua people. While their living and working circumstances are harsh and severe, by our standards, we were always greeted with a warm but timid smile, and afterwards a sincere hug of thanks for our efforts. I saw the face of God in those people. Despite their limited means, they gifted us with a bounty of grace and thankfulness. Thanks be to God.